Hey guys, welcome back. So today we are again with a very interesting topic. We are meeting with a very interesting topic to discuss, which is about Selenium interview questions. After being available quite a while in the market and attending many interviews, I figured out that this is the set of questions which are repeatedly asked or most frequently asked interview questions. So why delay? Let's get started. The very first one: what is an expat? This is like the basic question. Maybe most of the times, I've my interview started with this question, so I wanted to list it as number one. So XPath is nothing but when you're actually telling your interviewer, just tell them that it's a syntax that is used to locate any web element in your application. So let's get deep into this. It's basically in the language called XML. Okay, and it will help you to identify the web element in your application. Now let's think and relate it with a realistic example. Okay, you are asking your friend to come and pick you up. So your friend is trying to help you, but you have to provide where you are, right? So you would just send him a text with the address, or maybe call him up and tell him that I'm here, so can you please come and pick me. So here in this case, your friend is your automation tool that's trying to help you. So for automation tool to help you, you have to tell your automation tool what is the web element, what is the address of the element of that you want to automate. So in this case, your friend is your automation tool, and the address is nothing but your XPath. So just keep this in mind, and when you're actually talking to your interviewer or explaining him, just tell him that it is a syntax that is used to locate any element in your web application. So coming to your next question, and here you go. It is like the basic question again: what is the difference between absolute and relative expats? So if you have been using these expats for a long time, you must have already known the difference between absolute and relative expats. So there are two types of expats. Okay, the way you identify a web element using the expat, that can be either done using its absolute path or using its relative path. So let's take the first one, absolute. Just keep in mind, never get confused. Absolute starts with A, which means that start node or root node. So when you're explaining to the interviewer, just keep in mind that just look into his eyes and tell him that absolute is nothing but identifying an element and writing its XPath, getting its XPath from the start node. Relative is nothing but you can start your XPath from the node of your choice, as I have written. So let's understand this with the help of an example, guys. You are trying to find the XPath of add to cart button on your application. So imagine you are working on an online shopping site. Okay, you see number of items available, and each item, like upon selection, you will have an add to cart option. So you want to automate that add to cart button here. How do you write your absolute path? So absolute path starts with the start node or the root node, as we already discussed. Now let us start. It starts from online shopping site, follows by, maybe you want to buy men's shirts. Okay, men's slash shirts, and in shirts, you want to buy formals, and then you select it, and that's when you add to cart. This is the entire path, absolute path, from start node to the item of your, to the element of your choice. Now let's understand how we can get relative path out of the same example. Relative path, always remember, it starts with forward slashes, two forward slashes, and then it always have an asterisk. So the regular expression, or the star, which indicates that I don't care what is before this, just try to select and add to cart button. This is you are trying to give the XPath in such a way that you are starting with the node of your interest. You don't mind like whatever is earlier, but always just get me what I want. So in this case, if you see, relative is very short, whereas absolute will be very long. Now if interviewer is asking you about the advantages, or if you are really confident to explain more, try to give these points also. Relative, I always try to come up with my own customized relative paths in my application, because absolute paths are always very long. And the main disadvantage of using absolute path is, for example, there are some UI changes, and suddenly they wanted to, after shirts, right, they don't want the subsection of formals. They just removed and put all casuals and formal shirts in one place for the person to choose. Now there are some changes, and your XPath here in case of absolute needs to be changed, whereas when you're talking about relative, your XPath still remains the same. So the best advantage of using relative XPaths is even there will be very minor changes to your XPaths. So most of the times you don't have to keep maintaining or keep changing your XPaths based on your UI changes. So that's a basic difference. So again, like just keep in mind absolute starts with A, so always absolute paths start from root node. Relative short paths are very short and sweet. Now understand it with the help of the add to cart, and also give the advantages. Now coming to the next question. Now here if you see in the previous example, right, I say select and add to cart. What if I have 50 shirts to buy? Every selection will have an add to cart button here, right? So in that way, like the same XPath will be valid for 50 different 50 different elements. Yes guys, this is possible. So when you have this question, right, how do you uniquely identify a web element which has the same XPath? Definitely you have to say that application. Yes, definitely I have seen my application where two or more web elements have the same XPath. So this is how like customize my XPaths. I use the position of the a web element. So in this case, shirt one, if you see, I have written the XPath followed by the position. So in this case, in the bracket one indicates that I want to select the first web element. Same way, if I want to select shirt two, I'll give the XPath followed by the second one. So it means that in this case, I want to select second element. In this way, you by giving the position of the where it occurs on your page, you can uniquely identify your web element. So this is also a more very frequently asked question. So just keep in mind, like how if two, it's a common problem, right? Two or more web elements, if they have same XPath, how do you come up with a solution? So this is how I come up. So using the position of the element, you can uniquely identify the web element of your interest. What is the difference between find element and find elements? Yes. Now, before getting deep, let us understand what these are. So, as find element and find elements are two most commonly used methods which are used to locate web elements. So, find element, as the name itself says, it finds the element based on what locator technique you give. So, find element always returns the first element that is matching our XPath. So if there are two or three matching nodes, it gives you the first element. If there is only one matching node, it will return you that element. So it is always like the syntax that I have given, d dot find element. D here always stands for WebDriver object. So find elements method, by using that method you are trying to get or find the element, and on top of it now you will perform whatever operation. So if you want to perform any kind of operation, if you want to automate it, first thing you have to do is you have to find where it is in your application, right? So that's where this find element method is used. Find element, and then here you give by what are you finding it, by using its XPath. In brackets you'll give what XPath it is. So it will unique, that's the reason we have to uniquely give the XPath here. So it will uniquely identify the element, and whatever code you write, it will operate or it will perform on that web element. Now find elements, it's just like how you have find element, the plural form. Okay, find elements will always have, it will find array of matching elements. So usually, like your web application has 15 links, 20 links. So if you want to get all the links or count of links, or all the names or text of the links that are present, that's when you use find elements. In this case, you have your written list will be more, not a single element. So usually it returns an array of matching elements. That's what you can say. Now if you are comfortable with this particular explanation, right, you can just go ahead and try to explain these also, like answer these also. So find element always returns no such element found exception. So it will try to find an element by using whatever XPath or whatever locator technique we give. But what if it doesn't find any element of that particular XPath? It will always return no such element found. Find elements in other way, it will return an empty array list. So if there are zero matching elements in that particular XPath, it will always return zero list. It doesn't return no such element exception. So this is like a step ahead, but if you're asked, like if you're comfortable, you can always answer this question. Coming to the next one, what is the difference between implicit and explicit wait? So wait is very very important concept again. So when you are actually scripting, right, what happens is like it is a way to ask your script to wait for certain amount of time. Why? Before it throws you an exception. So what happens is sometimes the page load takes time, right? If you have observed all the buttons to get loaded, it usually there'll be a slight lag in the applications. So to avoid that, what happens is the script runs fast, and even before it loads we'll get an error that there is no element. So we don't want unnecessary script failures. For that we'll ask the script to wait for certain amount of time. So the weights are of two types here. First one, let's talk about implicit weight. Now I've written one example here. So you're managing timeouts, right? So using the WebDriver object, manage timeouts, implicitly wait here for 20 seconds. Time unit also you have to pass as an argument. So you're asking your script to wait for 20 seconds until it finds an the element. If it doesn't find an element of interest, whatever you're trying to find within that time frame, that's when it throws you an exception that element is not found. So it is, you are giving a chance for the script to wait for certain amount of time, because usually when you are working on your application, that okay, this particular button takes little more time. Okay, let me add a wait for this, and once it loaded, complete the task that you want to perform. So in that way your script won't fail. Now coming to what is explicit wait. Most of the times you can answer in such a way that yeah, there are two types of waits, but most of the times I've only used explicit wait because it's quite a smart way to tell your script, giving the expected condition. So in this explicit wait, you are explicitly asking it to wait for an expected condition to be satisfied. So it's definitely a smart technique, right? So if you see the syntax, right, there's a two-step process, guys. You have a class called WebDriver wait already available. Now you just create an object of that WebDriver wait. Okay, and then in the next step, what you do is on what element you want to add this, right? So web element object E is equal to, you'll use this driver wait object, whatever you have created in the step number 1, and then you'll put the expected conditions is again a class. So you will wait until this expected conditions of visibility of element located. Now in this case you are waiting for the visibility of the element until that whatever you specify here by dot xpath, right? So you are giving the xpath of an element. Until that element is visible, you have to wait. That's what you are telling your script. So the same way, right? Like unless you are actually smartly asking it to wait for a particular button or particular um, particular thing to be loaded before it actually throws you an exception. In the implicit wait, what will we do? We are just blindly giving it a time limit and asking it to wait no matter what. Now in the second wait, explicit wait, you are giving it an expected condition. Okay, and also you're telling it like on what condition, what is that it has to wait for. It has to wait for the visibility of the element that located whatever you specify in this xpath. So it will wait until that before it throws you an exception. So very very important question. Just get a clear understanding of what it is, like implicit and explicit. And also, like, when you, if you get a chance, try to tell the interviewer that you always use explicit wait. Like I know that there are two types of waits, but most of the times in my scripting I have used explicit wait because it's a way, like it's way smarter, wherein I can actually add my expected conditions and ask it to wait for certain conditions to be satisfied. So coming to the next one, how will you find the total number of links in your web page? Yeah, very, very frequently asked, like very important question. So this can be done as we already discussed about find elements, right? So it will give you the array list of elements, not a single one. So here you want the total number of links in your application. So here is where you use find elements method. So first step is how to get the count. You have to get the count, right? Like how many links are available in your page. So for that you'll create a links object in the and then what you say is WebDriver of find elements, and tag name is usually like tag name a. All the links or href they always starts with anchor tag a. So make sure that you identify it by anchor tag like a. Tag name, use tag name, and get the link size. So whenever you have that, like object name dot method, it's a inbuilt method. So by using its size you can retrieve the number or the count of links present in your application. Now once you get the count, like maybe 5 or 6, let's take the example that you get 5 links in the web page. Now you can also print those links to see what they are. So for that you have to run a loop. So here I have given, right, I is equal to 1, I is less than the same thing, links, that object that I created of size. So in this case 5 links, right? So I is less than or equal to 5, and then it will iterate and it will print what is the text of it. There is another method called get text. So if you see the system.out.println, I am actually printing the exact link text, whatever I'm getting. So it will loop 5 times here, and it will print all the 5 links that are available in my application or page. So the same concept can be used to find the number of text boxes, number of labels, number of buttons, etc. So all you have to do is you have to create an object of list, and then you have to use the find elements method and get the count of it. Once you get the count of it, you have to iterate it, write a loop, and make sure that you are printing all these using your get text method. So this is how you have to tell, like explain. If even like if they ask you to write pseudo code, right, I have just written, like the loop and the 2 steps that I've listed, and they were convinced. So interviewers should understand that yes, you really worked on it. So it depends on how confidently you project your answer. Now what is the difference between driver.close and driver.quit? Yes, both are used to close your browsers. Now close is little different than quit, because close will actually close the current browser which you are actually working on, which is in focus. So when you say driver.close, it will close the web application or web browser that is currently open. Now quit is little different, because you might have, when you kick off your test suite, right, 2 or 3 4 5 tests, like many tests will be running in parallel, and there might be many browsers open in the background that your Selenium automation script has opened. So d.quit will close all the browser instances. There will be no open browser when you say driver.quit. So I'll talk about TestNG in the next video. I don't want to club Selenium plus TestNG together. So TestNG has a specific set of questions. There I'm going to talk about suites. So before, like when you want to execute a particular, like after class or after test, if you want all the browsers to close, that's when we use driver.quit. So very simple, like if you remember, close will only close the current browser, whereas quit will close all the browser instances. The next question, how do you switch between frames? So you know that when you're working in an application, there will be a lot of hidden frames, like frame inside a frame, and to multiple frames one inside the other. Those are called nested frames. So these will be indicated in your HTML called iframes, like how we discussed that every link will be starting with an anchor tag. Just like that, every frame will be starting with iframe. So use the same concept here. So how does it work is, there are some frames that are hidden. So you just follow these steps. Driver dot switch to frame. First thing you have to do is get the count of frames available, like how we did, like int, so just define one number, one variable, and assign it, like give the find elements method, and identify all the iframes by its tag name called iframe, and get the size of it. So in your size variable, you are having the count of iframes available. Now if you want, like if you have 15 frames available in your application, you can use indexing concept. Like all the index always starts with 0. So if you want to go to fifth frame, you have to make sure 0 1 2 3 4, driver dot switch to frame, and id give it as 4. Then your focus will go to frame number 5. So always remember, like one point here, driver dot switch to default content. What does it mean is, you are in a frame, and at one point you want to come back to your parent frame. So you rather than traversing step by step, you can always use this default content method. Driver dot switch to default content will always take you back to your parent frame. So when you are asked about frames and how to switch between, clearly explain that you use the driver dot switch to frame. You will switch between frames using the index. So before that, like how do you get the indexes? You can get all the number of iframes that are available in the page. Based on that, you will use like whatever you want and navigate there. At any point of time, if you want to come back to your parent frame, that's when you use your default content. Next question. What is the difference between assert and verify commands? Yes, very important question again. So assert always is used. We know, like, as a QA engineers, right? All our job is to make sure that it works. Assertions, right? Assert whether it is passing or not, and there are a number of beautiful concepts of Selenium where you can assert based on your different types of assertions are available, as we already know. So when assertion fails, what happens is all the test steps after that code are skipped. That is the basic thing that you have to remember. Whereas it's the other way in verify. Even in verify, if there is a point where it fails, everything will not stop, wherein it will execute and it will be logged in as a failure. So failure will still be there, but it will not stop the execution. The test will continue. But again, like, verify nobody will use, because all we want is to make sure we want to assert, and just then and there we will see whether it is passing or not. There is no point of continuing when it is a failure. That's what we believe. So most of the times that's why we use assert. Do not tell this point unless you are asked to, but I'm just telling you for your information. TestNG framework, that it does not support verify. There is something called soft assert and hard assert, which we'll talk later. But always remember, when asked about assert, tell that if assertion fails, all test steps will be, after that line will be skipped. Whereas not the same case in verify, because if in verify, if a test will continue executing and it will just log whatever has been failed. Can you explain me more about your framework structure? So this is this like, you can just keep talking about this if they ask this question. But yes, they did ask me. So if you really did not work on any automation, just if you're not comfortable, just tell them that yeah, I haven't worked. But there will be some cases where your company will have a dedicated automation team, right? So what you can tell is, I have not uh, built any framework from scratch, but I did use the framework that has already been developed by my core automation team. So you can tell that my company has a core automation team which will always work on automation and come up with a centralized framework. It's kind of plug and play. So I do use it in my application based on the structure that they have provided. So we have weekly calls where we discuss about the project, and about the framework, how to plug into my application, etc. So if you are a little more comfortable in scripting, you can just go a step in ahead and tell that there are some functionalities that the framework doesn't support. So I script those functionalities, and I come up with my own scripts. Some application specific functionalities are there which the framework has some limitations. So I overcome those and I come up with my own scripts. Now this might give him a chance to ask you more about automation, but yes, if you are really comfortable, you can go ahead and take this. You know, tell him that you have scripted a few things where application framework was not supporting. If you have worked on automation, entirely a different answer. So start from the structure, how you have, like, start from how you write your test cases, talk about your test suites, how you group them, and what is the process that you're following to maintain these XMLs, and are you kicking off your scripts from your XMLs, or how is the Jenkins job set up, and talk about Maven repo and integration of your scripts with Jenkins, etc. Also talk about how you manage or maintain your scripts. So talk about reports, like how you are sharing your test results. Is it an email that's going to the business team or developers, like what do you do in case of failures, how are you handling them, etc. So it will be like on a high level, but again, tell them the entire structure, starting from naming conventions, packages, and how you are structuring it and how you are integrating it with Jenkins, and how, what is the repo that you have, like are you using Git stash or whatever, like based on the automation framework that you're using. Give him the complete high level overview of what automation you have worked on. Now, what are the other question that you frequently they'll ask is different types of locator techniques. All the time we have been talking about XPath, right? So tell them that there are a number of ways that I identify my web element. I use id, I use name, link, class name, XPath, sometimes CSS, etc. Although most widely used are XPath. So that's when, like, so he might ask you more about XPaths, but by this time make sure that you're pretty comfortable working on XPaths and customizing them. Coming to your next one, how do you type a text using Selenium? We have a method called send keys. So if you want to type I love testing, how do? You'll use the WebDriver object, right? Driver dot, you'll first find the element where you want to type. So find the text box in this case by using its XPath, and then use the method send keys and send whatever you want. So inverted commas I have given I love testing. So whatever I love testing will be typed in this web element which I specify. So it's a straightforward answer. How can you read the text of the web element? So sometimes, dynamically you don't know what the text is, so you want to get it from the web page itself. So for that we have an excellent method again called get test. So we get text, sorry. So what you have to do is identify the web element first, and again driver object dot find element by XPath. So once you find out that element what it is, that then use this method called get text to get what exactly the text of that particular element is during the runtime. What are the different types of XPath functions that you have used? So if you really, like, this is, you cannot skip from this question, because definitely they're going to ask you like how you identified web elements. So obviously the most common way we identify is using XPath. Now XPath questions are always common, so make sure that you tell them that I always use, like, at the rate name, and give like what XPath I want, like what element I want. I use to, I use at the rate value to get the value, give the value, and identify it. Sometimes if I want to identify a link, I use href. And there is a these are the functions that are commonly used. So if you want to know that, all the web elements whose name is Priya, whose name contains Priya, right? So you can just customize. This is all relative path I'm talking about. So relative XPath will be like, start with contains, get me all the web elements whose name contains Priya. So Sri Priya, Supriya, whatever, like, everything will be returned. So in this case, number of matching nodes that is getting written might be like 4 or 5, out of which you select whatever you want. That's how we do, like if we have a larger set of data returning. The other option, the other things which we use is and or conditions. Again, straightforward. So if you want, like, one of these conditions, so type of the button will be submit, and its name is login. So either submit button or the login, the element whose name is login will be returned. In the second case, both conditions have to be satisfied. So type should be submit and name should be whatever I specify. So those will be returned as matching nodes. Sometimes we also have starts with, we can use this. So we have number of labels who starts with ID called sign up, like, sign up with Gmail, sign up with Google, sign up with Facebook, etc. If you have those in your web application, right? So you can always say get all those labels whose name starts with ID, like, whose ID starts with sign up. So in this case, you will get all the labels, matching labels back. So how to get child elements? So if you see any shopping site, you have so much of list, right? Like in the home section, you have like kitchen, dining, etc. So in that case, lot of options are available. How do you get one out of them? So always say, like, ID is home, and followed by the child of list. Now get all the child elements of this particular ID. Now if you want first one in that, again using this, you can list of one will give you, return you the first child element. If you want 50th one, list of 50 will give you the 50th element. So if you need more information about these XPaths, I would suggest go and check my video on XPaths. So there are many examples out there, so they might help you. But usually, like in the interview, when they ask, you can just list that these four, and these should be good enough. Coming to the next one, how do you select a value from drop down? Most common question, we always use a select class. So we have a class called select that lets you do all these drop downs and, check boxes and radio button functions, like, functionalities. So what we can tell is, Yeah, I always use select class and all, and take advantage of the methods that are readily available. So for that, create an object of this class. So select obj is my object here. So I created an object here, and using the object name dot, once you say dot, it lists all the methods. So select by index. So if you want, like, first one to be selected from the drop down, I'll say select by index of 0. It will select the first element. In the same way, I can select it by its value. In the same way, I can select it by its text. So when they ask you, like, how do you select it, you can say by using select class I will select it, and I have a number of methods in this class where I can directly use based on what is available, etc. So you can elaborate from here. And how do you find if an element is displayed on screen? Yes, so we have is displayed method. So is displayed, is enabled, is selected. All these are boolean. So they'll either return true or false. So if it is displayed, it will be true. If the element is not displayed, it will return false. So same way enabled and same way selected. If it is selected, it will return true, else false. So these are boolean values. So just tell them that, yeah, tell him that, I'll find using this is displayed, and you can just elaborate and tell it's a boolean. It either returns true or false based on the availability of that element, or whether it is displayed or not, etc. Now, how can you validate the title of your web page? So you have again a beautiful method called get title. So it directly gets the title of the web page. So what you can do is you can create a string, and actual title is equal to WebDriver object here d dot get title. Use that method. So whatever, for example, if the title is google.com or gmail.com, it will be saved in this actual title. Now write expected title as whatever you actually you are expecting. Now assert, using assert you can validate whether expected is equal to actual. So simple small snippet, you can just tell them that this is how I validate you, but you using get title method specify this, because that's how you that is actually allowing you to validate on getting the title from the web page. What UI components have you automated? Yeah. So you, when you talk about automation and when you talk about experts, right? You should know like what are the web elements that you have automated on your UI. What are the components that you have automated on your UI? So list all the things. These are the things that came up to my mind. So you can add whatever you have automated. So usually like all the buttons, drop downs, check boxes, links, navigation, pagination, radio buttons, you know images, titles can be validated. So this is a high level answer, but again, if if they asked you what are the components, you can quickly list all these components there. Next one, how do you debug your scripts? Very, very important question. So how do you debug? So yes, you have your framework ready, you have these automated scripts running on a daily basis which have already been scheduled. Okay, there are scheduled jobs which will kick off, and you will get an email. So how do you handle if you see any failure? So first thing you have to do is check the XPath. Usually 90% of the times what happens is there will be some UI changes, and because of which the XPaths will change. So that's the reason they say scripts need continuous maintenance. Why do we have to maintain is we have to make sure that the XPaths are intact, and script is working as expected. So first check XPath. If XPath is correct, check the logs. Definitely framework without logs doesn't exist. So make sure your logs are tracking correctly. See if they are showing any errors. Check the infrastructure, whether all the jobs that are dependency jobs have run for that day or not. Highlight the issue. If you still see the issue, highlight it in the stand up, and bring it to the attention of broader team. And again, like if there are any changes, right, make sure that you retest it manually in your local before uh, before integrating it with git, because sometimes manually, like locally, the script might fail too. So make sure it is perfectly working fine. That's when you push all your changes to git or any repository, like whatever you're using. So this is how you debug and act in case of script failures. Now, the last question is your application 100% automated? Yeah, usually, a couple of times I've been asked this. There is no generic answer for this. It depends on the domain. Yes, although we are trying to achieve 100% automation, I have seen applications where, we have not yet automated to 100%. Only regression is of primary focus. So you can just based on how comfort you are, you can just modify your answer, and you can just tell them that in my company we are right now focusing on regression suites. So that's we want to baseline all the regression suites and make sure that regression is 100% automated, so that we don't have to manually run them and worry about them. Or if your application is really 100% automated, that's really wow. So you can just go ahead and tell how you automated it, etc. So these are this is the basic set which I been asked, and which I have heard from many of my friends, that they've been also asked all these questions. So if you have any new experiences, and if you have been asked any new questions, right, please put them in the comment section. It might be helpful to me, and someone who is actually new, and someone who is really willing and desperate to get a job. That will be very, very helpful. I would definitely request that kind of inputs from you all. Don't worry, do your best, and go over. I always say, apart from what we have discussed, we need lot of practice. Just set up Eclipse and put a class name dot and see what methods you have and play around. That itself is the best learning. So until then, let's talk in the next video. Good luck and happy testing, guys. Bye bye.